Good afternoon. This is the second session on the inaugural day, which is November 6th, of Bharata-Tirtha, our international webinar on Indian Knowledge System, or IKS. So we had an excellent morning session where the Minister, Dr. Pokhriyal Nishank ji, had promised us with a Center of Excellence on Indian Knowledge Systems, and the whole session was really jubilant. It was marvelous, and it was very exhaustive, and it was very rich. So now we are in the second half, and we'll have an overview of the pursuit of Indian knowledge systems in IIT Kharagpur. I mean, what has happened so far till date in IIT Kharagpur. So we'll begin with the presentation on the role of technology student Gymkhana and students affairs, which will be presented by our Professor Ajay Singh, President, Students Gymkhana, IIT Kharagpur. So Professor Singh will take us through a wonderful journey and show that how the technology students Gymkhana at IIT Kharagpur plays a unique role to leverage, to showcase the various cultural, normative, behavioral, and deep ecosystem activities of the students, the staff, and the faculty fraternity of IIT Kharagpur. So with this, I have the pleasure to give it to Professor Singh. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Sen. First of all, namaskar to all of you. First of all, I thank you for inviting me to present activities of one of the most active organization in the campus, Technology Student Gymkhana, and perhaps it is the most active organization in the state also. So in this presentation, I will basically this will highlight the activities of nearly 15,000 students in the campus, and I must acknowledge those students who are behind this work, and I congratulate them also for their hard work, dedication, and commitments. So basically the summary of this presentation is already given in this first slide. So you see the activities which are, so just pointing out. So this summary of this, so summary of all these activities are given in this first slide. And so let me introduce first this Technology Student Gymkhana. It is basically a hub of extracurricular activities, and it was formed in 1952, and since then it is cultivating and nurturing extracurricular activities to the students. Okay. Basically, the aim of this Gymkhana is to preserve the ancient philosophical and scientific heritage of the India and transform the same to the young generation through highly specialized activities planned in and executed in a scientific manner. So let me give you the brief architecture of the Gymkhana. Basically, we can divide into three verticals. So we have some representation from faculty members. They are basically acting as a mentor to the students. We have second verticals, which consist of sports officers, PTIs, and staff members. So they play a major role in supervision of different kind of activities. And the major execution part is done through these students. Among the students, we have several representations, or several representative of the students are there, and basically they take part in all the committees which take most of the decisions. So students are more or less important in the decision making of the technology student Gymkhana. So broadly we can classify our major activities into 4 categories. In one step, we would like to go to the moon by taking the technology to higher levels. On the other hand, also we want to preserve our talents and cultural heritage through our social and cultural activities. We are conscious about health and fitness of the students, so that we are following in the sports and game section. And we are not also forgetting our society, which are with us through these student welfare programs. So apart from these 4 major branches, we have total of 36 societies working in the Gymkhana, and the Gymkhana plays a supervisory role to that. So our activity starts from the hall levels, and the hall level activities is classified into general championship events, and there are roughly 14 events in the sports and games. Nearly the same amount of activities are in the social and cultural activities. 6 events are in the technology. We have inter-IIT events, freshers tournaments, and research scholar meets. Among these, the major or the mega events are there in the social cultural, that is called as a Spring Fest, and mega events in technology and management system, that is Kshitiz is included into this. Now, activities related to the theme of the present function is the inter-hall Rangoli and illumination, Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat activities, culinary arts activities, modified martial arts, Spring Fest, organization of events like Speak Mackay, and yogic activities. There are several more, but we will highlight some of these activities in the later slide. So illumination and Rangoli, this is the unique program of IIT Kharagpur. It was started in 1981 when we decided to celebrate Deepavali in a unique way, where we are not polluting our environment. We are going to use natural ingredients to celebrate our Deepavali. In this event, students participate in a coherent manner. They prepare the beautiful structures through natural ingredients like Dept and Rangoli materials. And on the evening of Deepavali, when the sky is dark, our campus is glittering with the diyas, thousands of diyas. Along with this, the students also make Rangoli each of the halls, and they compete with each other. So I will show you some of the pictures or some of the structures the students have made in the different hall. So this is the last year structure presented by RP Hall of Residence in 2019 and 20. In this structure, basically it is showing the different episodes of Ramayana. In the first one at the left side, it is the Vanvas of Ram and Sita. In the second left is the fight of Jatayu and Ravana. The third in the middle, it is showing you the Sita, Ma Sita going to Mother Earth. In the fourth one, it is showing you the Agni Pariksha, and the fifth one is the Ashwamedh horse scene with the Lava and Kush. So it may appear that these architectures are made with lights, but you will see in the later video that how much effort the students are putting into making this kind of structures. So this one is from the RK Hall of Residence. These are the episodes of Mahabharata, and where the Krishna was the main architecture of this event. The IIT Kharagpur, the reflection of IIT Kharagpur is shown here in this architecture. It is presented by the Azad Hall of the residence. So apart from this illumination part, the students also participate in Rangoli competition, where most of them choose the theme according to the societal events. And in this particular Rangoli, this is made by Azad Hall of Residence. So on one side we see that we are planning to land up in the moon, but unfortunately we have also societal problems where we see news of women harassment and rapes. The second thing, which was taken by RK Hall of Residence, this is based on the green planet, where we are exploiting our natural resources randomly, and the cases like a drought, water conservation, deforestation, environment pollution have been portrayed. So this is the third picture. It's unique in the sense that the same picture changes according to the light which is falling on top of the Rangoli. In one case it is showing the Lord Ganesha. When the light changes, it's showing the Lord Shiva. So same Rangoli, two faces are visible here. So I will show you one of the video which tells you everything about Rangoli, so how it starts and how it ends. Yeah, it ends with KGP ka tempo high hai. So that is what the usual tradition for us. So next event which we follow is Ek Bharat and Shresth Bharat. India lives in diversity, India believes in diversity, and this is the unique program which is initiated by Ministry and Honorable Minister, Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi. So this we started in the year 2015, and since then we are celebrating these events regularly in our campus. So in these events, we choose two states with different culture and tradition. We bring them in the campus and we try to learn from each other. So in the last few years, we have conducted several such programs. So in regularly, so we have done it from Tamil Nadu and Jammu Kashmir together, Andhra Pradesh and Punjab together, Assam and Rajasthan, Odisha and Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya, and finally Jharkhand and Goa in the recent one. So this is the brief summary of these programs, Ek Bharat and Shresth Bharat, where you can see different stalls are placed in the campus. So this is from the event Tamil Nadu and Jammu Kashmir together. So different traditions, different cultures are shared among the campus residents through these programs. Andhra Pradesh and Punjab, so Kuchipudi must be there. Assam and Rajasthan, two extreme states. Odisha and Maharashtra. Uttar Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya. Jharkhand and Goa. Yeah, so next one we have a mega event or mega cultural event. This is annual cultural fest of IIT Kharagpur called as the Spring Fest. It started in 1960. It started with a small event, and with the time it has evolved into a mega cultural fest. Now in this fest, not only students from all over the colleges in India participate, but participants from all over the world, they come here and perform their talent. This Spring Fest also celebrates with certain responsibility, and we are supporting a NGO of Prayatna, taking a bite out of hunger. So these are some of the pictures of the events which you have received from the Spring Fest. So I will show you one small video. Video is there.
But there's no time for me. need you to listen, I need you to hear, and don't show any fear. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. Yeah. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul.
Okay, so we are also hosting some of the events sponsored by the Speak Mackay. Speak Mackay is Society for Promotion of Indian Classical Music and Culture among the youths. And we are organizing several events through this organization in our campus. So in 2018, we organized 6th International Convention of Speak Mackay, where legends in different classical music and other fields, they came here in the campus and interacted with the students and the campus residents. We also teach students the benefit of yoga. We have regular classes for yogic culture. Not only the students, but the campus residents also participate in this movement. So every year we celebrate also International Yoga Day, where large number of people come forward to participate and promote the culture of yoga in the campus. Yeah, this is also related to the same, when the campus community also participates. Many other faculty members can be seen in this picture. So last year also we organized 54 inter-IIT sports meet, where all the 23 IITs they participated came here and have a sports meet here. There is one small video for this event, and with this I will end up.
When you feel it's hopeless.
with this, I will end my presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Singh. I think this was really heart-filling to see the richness, the variety, and the heterogeneity, yet a very strong undercurrent of youthfulness, which is the very spirit of the students' fraternity of IIT Kharagpur. Professor Singh, probably you know I was once in Gymkhana for about a year. Then I had to take up the headship of some other school, and I can see someone like Mr. Mondol and others here, and of course Dr. Panda and others. So Gymkhana is very close to my heart, and this was an excellent presentation. And you gave us an impression that you are not aware of anything, but the way you presented, it shows that you are one with the spirit of the technology students Gymkhana. I think let us give a big hand to Professor Singh, and I think under his able leadership, the technology students Gymkhana will leap forward with more achievements, feats, and great promises. Because it's very, very important, as Sri Aurobindo used to say, to keep the youth force under the right monitoring and mental health, so that each can pursue as a second stage different facets of science, technology, social sciences, or recreational sciences. Everything is a science, provided it gets repeated, explored, manifested, and readjusted. So it becomes a science. So with this, we'll go on to a second presentation. And so I'm doing both sides of the river bank, and I have to take over this presentation. It will be a short one on the science and heritage. It will be a short one. It will be a short one. It will be a short one on the Science and Heritage Initiative of IIT Kharagpur, which happened from about 2013 to 2019 for about 5 years. It was a mega project which came from the then Ministry of Human Resources Education, Human Resources Development of Govt of India, and about 14 principal investigators had worked on this. So I'll go over to the other side and give you a brief of this presentation. I'll be very quick because after me there will be another presentation which is almost like a fallout of Sandhi, which is a presentation on the history of science and technology by Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary. So as you see here, the Sandhi, which is the acronym of the Science and Heritage Initiative of IIT Kharagpur, had about 9 various domains. It looks like one of the faces of the Rubik's Cube. It's like a 3 by 3. So if you see the first vertical, you see language system, which is Bhasa, Sangeet, which is musicology, and Ankan, which is iconography. And then the next system, which is a little bit on the normative side, which is Dhyana, Moksha, and Karuna, meditation, end-of-life care, and compassion. And then finally the applications, one being Itihash, which is geoarchaeology, where a lot of good work actually happened. And then our 8th domain, which is Shilpa, which is creative economy, on which we are doing some recent projects on the creative economy of Bengal, the creative economy of Orissa, a very special project on the creative economy of all the small, medium scale and micro industries that surround it with the Durga Puja festival. But for all these 8 domains, we were looking forward for a window through which we will see language and the way the Indian systems behave, music and the way the Indian systems behave, and iconography. So for that we had the 9th domain, which was Varanasi. So it was like Varanasi and Sanskrit, Varanasi and music, Varanasi and Itihash, which is the historic exploration, Varanasi and economy. So this is in a nutshell the 9th domain of Sandhi, and there was a lot of good work. I think more than 50 publications and top journals were accomplished. About 4 to 5 PhDs and about 15 to 16 master's degrees were allotted under this. But most important of all, we could make very strong outreach and dissemination, and about I think 7 or 8 books have been published, of which some books have become quite popular. and they were distributed on a national and international scales. Very, just to add one small teaser, like even some of the books of Sandhi reached the graphics council of Harvard University and Columbia University. I mean, so that was very satisfactory. That was very satisfactory. So how did Sandhi really work? So this is I'll make it very simple, and I'll again go back and I'll play again. So Sandhi was like a mixture of a scientific element along with a heritage element. For example, on the scientific side, you could be having like the river systems, the spatial systems, and the economic systems. But on the heritage side, you may have the ecological footprints, the aesthetics, and the cultural dimensions. So it could be a combination of, say, like S2 and H1, like rivers and ecology. So river systems is more of a geographical, geological science, and ecological footprints is more of a cultural landscape planning that's pursued in architecture and many other footprints. So this was a matrix, a methodology which was pursued in Sandhi. And it became very popular, and today through papers and publication it has reached different frontiers. And then when all that happens, there is a final movement which is neither science nor heritage, but it is science plus heritage and something beyond. So that's the whole aim. It's like the relationship between the sun and the earth. I mean, so long there is an earth, the sun is very, the presence of the sun is very significant because we have life. And so long there is sun, life sustains on earth. So it's like a twin connection between science and heritage that we could realize. We had done some work on Sanskrit, and most of the work was of course done in computer science department, computer science, and a small project happened with humanities. So this is a quotation by Will Durant, where it is claimed that Sanskrit is like the apex of the entire language system of the world, and there is one theory which calls it as a Indo-European system. Some agree, some does not agree. But what is important is that Sanskrit has some direct and indirect relationship with mostly all the language systems, especially of Europe and even of America. I mean, very recently, other proofs of coming of a eastbound migration through Kamchatka Peninsula and Bering Strait from Asia to the Americas at a time even when the Indus Valley civilization was not born. So if that is true, Sanskrit is probably more than 12 to 14,000 years old, more than 12 to 14,000 years old. So it's a pre-Indus Valley civilization. That also makes Indus Valley a post-Vedic civilization. That is a very important realization, because it's true, because Indus Valley civilization has icons like the swastika, the Saptachanda, the Matrika, the Shivam Yoga Mudra. So these are all icons which are derived from the Vedas. So even if the Aryans had come from outside, they required an India to learn the Vedic culture. So without India, the Aryans does not mean anything. Whether they come from Mars or from Germany, it's meaningless, and the definition of Aryanship cannot be proved by genetics or race. It's a wrong interpretation. So that was, a lot of papers went there. So this is a glimpse of the first domain of work, which is language, music, and iconography. So Professor Pallab Dasgupta took over music. Language was taken up by other professors. I and some professors in IIT Kharagpur, in the Department of Architecture and Regional Planning, we took iconography. And we could find something very interesting, something very, very interesting. For example, if you take the iconography of swastika, we have a whole publication on that, and that's a book which has sold more than a few thousand copies in different parts of India and the world. The swastika is both iconographic symbol, it is a temporal symbol, that means it signifies time. It's a sacred symbol of space. It shows the four quadrants, the Chaturvarga or the Chaturvedi of India. And in the same fashion, Adi Shankaracharya had located the Char Dhams in India. So the iconographic symbol also has the rotational things, which is called the circle of fifth, that you see on the middle top of the slide, which is also based on a swastika pattern, based on which musical distributions of modes are also there. Now, mode is a very interesting word, which is there in statistics, which is also there in music, and it's also in deconstruction, which is language. So we found out words and syntaxes which cut through a common genre of language, of music and iconography. Now, this is the beauty of Sanskrit, which does not portray a single domain or knowledge. So a lot of these were pointed out by the faces that you see on the top, and there is a small picture, and he's Dr. Haridas Chaudhuri, who actually took the Gospel of Life Divine to the West, and then the Californian Institute of Studies were founded after the American Institute of Indian Studies, and then the Israel Institute was established, and there 3 students took the research further. One was, of course, Arnold Toynbee, the second person was Abraham Maslow, and the third person was Alan Watts. So with that, a lot of appreciation of Eastern or Indian language, music and iconography has happened in the West, especially in California. But the issue is that the students of India are not aware of it, are not aware of it. So in Sandhi, we did some approach to bring what appreciation has actually happened in the West and what we should know, which we should have actually appreciated in India, but it's being appreciated by people in the West. It's like the fruits of this bank of this side of the river is appreciated by people on the other bank of the river. So a lot of Indian recognition is coming via the West. The West appreciates, and then we as Indians appreciate. But that is also okay. But what was said today in the morning by the Hon'ble Minister and others is that, I mean, it's high time in India that we have a strong sense of recognition so that we discover the great things about your language, music and iconography. One very important discovery which one IIT alumnus working in Microsoft had done is that he found that lot of the Greek modes are actually originally the Indian ragas. For example, the Dorian mode of ancient Greece is Raga Kafi, and the Rhegian mode of ancient Greece is Raga Bhairavi, and the Lydian mode of ancient Greece is Raga Kalyan, Rag Kalyan. So about 1,500 years later, this became the music of Bach, Mozart, Beethoven and others. So it shows that the whole structure of music, from melody to harmony, and from harmony to distribution of harmony, and finally to rhythms and blues, which is American music, it happened in an east to west sense. So this was a strong paper which was published from our site, and so that's about music. I'll go a little faster. So we did a very strong work on Varnamala, which is a very detailed work. We are trying to pursue this work. This is actually a hidden work which was done by a great scholar, Sir John Woodroffe. He was actually a British judge and who came to India, and then he became a sadhu, a saint, a monk, and then he dedicated his work on this area, which shows that whatever we see outside in the environment is actually coded inside as the what we call the 48 consonants of Sanskrit literature, which is also the matrika burnas of our internal yogic system. Now, this is something which is hidden in mystery. So, in Sandhi, we made a phase 1 attempt to bring out this ancient mystery of the connection of the external universe, which is already reflected inside the internal universe. So, this is the science of Varnamala, which we attempted under Sandhi and which we are still trying to pursue. And this is an area which requires a lot of deconstruction, uncoding of what we call Cepstrum. This is a MIT software which was done using Fourier analysis and MATLAB software. So one of my colleague, a PhD from IIT Kharagpur, he published a paper on this, and I was a co-author with him. So some work was done, and more work is expected. So this is what we did on the Varnamala side. And this is the work that we did. So we worked on wave distribution, spectrum and cepstrum, and we worked on the wave quality analysis and the arrival of vowel, which is not consonant, which is o, e, u, So the Omkar of India is actually at the level of vowel, and the consonant is a much lower. So they have thermodynamic, that means they have hit features. For example, if you spell R for a long time, it generates heat. So Ra or Rang Bij is associated with heat. So every consonant and every vowel has a thermodynamic or a yogic value. And that leads to the formulation of mantras, the Bij mantras. So when the yogi recites the mantra, he generates a principle of heat inside. So yoga is a science of developing that inner heat, which is called tapas, or Agni of the Rig Veda or the Atharva Veda. So we did not get into that, but there was a connect. This is a connect between language, meditation, and iconography. And a lot of work has been done in the world, which is called noetic sciences, and especially in Germany, Finland, and also in the US. So we connected with some scholars there, and we did some work here. And then we had a very strong area of work where Professor Aurobindo Rautre and his team worked on therapeutics, and a lot of good work was done under the Kriya Yoga Foundation, and a lot of testing was done. I mean, a lot of work has already happened here. So Professor Rautre and his team did the step 2 work, and a lot of machines were purchased, and the psychological and the psychosomatic changes that happens to a initial beginner in meditation to a more matured person in meditation, they were all tested. And of course, there are about 7 or 8 papers which are available. 2 papers went on in Taylor and Francis and Elsevier, which was a great achievement. And of course, a great work was done in geo-exploration and archaeology. 3 important areas. One was Chandra Ketugarh in Bengal, an area which takes the history of Bengal to about 700 BC, 2,700 years old, almost towards the beginning, almost towards the end of Indus Valley civilization. And then we walked also in a place called Pushpagiri, Lalitagiri, and Vajragiri, which was the ancient seat of Buddhism and Tantra in Orissa. And apart from that, we did we can claim that it was a huge teamwork, and we had 2 international collaborations with Columbia University, the Graduate School of Architecture and Planning, and with the GIS School of Georgia Tech, Atlanta. So this went on for about 3 to 4 years, and those workshops were excellent. So this work had a geo-exploration site, it had an archaeological historic reformulation site, and this also had a surface urban planning, urban sciences site. So this was fairly rich, and about 4 to 5 PhDs were produced. I mean, one PhD just got completed 3 months back, and a lot of papers have been published in this domain. So this was a real commendable area, and about 25 to 30 people worked in this area. And there was one area where our team, I was basically involved here. So we worked on the small economy. Small is beautiful, Schumacher says. Small is beautiful, Mahatma Gandhi says. Small is beautiful, Gurudev Rabindranath says. Small is beautiful, Sri Aurobindo says. Small is beautiful, even Swamiji said. Because Indian economy is not actually a MNC, a multinational corporation development-driven economy. The works of Amartya Sen, Muhammad Yunus, Mahabul Haq, the post-Kenneth Arrow work in economics are all works which is based on microfinance, small economy, little economy, so that even if big companies collapse, the small organizations remain and they sustain the economy. So we did a small work at Godiahat, and we did a fairly good work at Kumartuli, which gave us a second project last year. It just ended at the beginning of the COVID era. This was with the Queen's Mary University of London, and we did a fairly extensive survey, research, exploration work on all the thousands and thousands of creative economic industries that are associated with Bengal. And then we found out that almost 45 to 50% of Bengal's economy runs on this. The others are big economy and big organization. So the actual people of Bengal survives in and around Durga Puja. So if Durga Puja goes, half of Bengal goes. And this is a circular economy, and this is an economy which you can sustain. So culture, deep culture, ecology, deep ecology actually sustains economy. So these are called creative industries, and today creative industries is a big thing in the West, like Bilbao, like Florence, like New York, where the focus is not on huge things, the focus is on small things, like the peddler, like the hawker, like the bohemian person, like the fair person, the person who comes occasionally. So these are very, very important things, and we just tried a little bit with promoting IPRs and different business plans and so on and so on. And then we also checked on the frugal pedagogy, and we had a collaboration with IIT Kanpur, and I must say here, Dr. Komudi Patil of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, she was our partner, and we did a project in Kolkata with a parallel project in Varanasi. She worked on toys, and we worked on the creative economic products of Durga Puja, and we did a lot of things together. And this particular project which we did on the Sandhi has been taken up by the College Street Foundation for the recent post-storm devastation which happened almost more than about 9 months back in Kolkata. So this project became important after the closure of Sandhi phase 1. Under economics, there has been a lot of things. I just gave you a glimpse, but with that I come to some glimpses of collaborations and outreach. So this is a book, the second book which we published. We discovered a swastika in a place called Jarwa, which is about 400, it's about 250 kilometers off northwest of Bhimbetka, and there we found a swastika which is about 12,000 years old, and so which means the Vedic symbols were there in India about 12,000 years back. The swastika, and what exactly is the swastika? It is actually the rotation of the Saptarshi Mandal around the pole star. So if you see that diagram, you see the Saptarshi Mandal at spring, at summer, at autumn and winter. So if you make a footprint of the 4 quadrants, like a Carnot cycle of physics, then you get the swastika. So the swastika is actually a thermodynamic cycle of the movement of the Saptarshi Mandal around the Polaris. So which shows that Indian astronomical observations were so powerful. So we did an exhibition with the Indian Council of Cultural Relations, ICCR, and this was a real success. It was there for 3 years. Even consulate generals came, and you can see the school children have come and attended it. We had about 20 school children from different portions of Kolkata and beyond Kolkata coming in and watching our galleries and everything. And this is something which we are trying to do under the Indian knowledge system more and more, because we found out more than theories and papers and publications, iconography is more attractive to the common man. They understand visuals much more. Visuals are very popular. So if you can explain things visually, through a diagram, processing, it becomes very, very interesting. This was a discovery. So exhibitions, outreach, and disseminations are and we did an exhibition even at the India International Center and also at India Habitat Center, and our stuff has been taken over even by other universities and other colleges. We have published book which has been accepted by about more than 25 colleges as their textbooks. This is a second book. We also have a first book which had become even more popular. So this is one panel from the swastika where you see that every torque, every arm of a swastika is actually a wonderful image of going from center to say west and then from west to north. And I think I've said this about 100 times. In India, most of these words like Purva and Uttara and Paschima and Dakshina are just not, Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary is an expert in Sanskrit. She knows 100 times better than me. But every word in Sanskrit has multiple meanings, based on different pratyas, different bhavas and different expressions. Like Uttara means north, but Uttara is also future. Purva is past. But
Purva is past, but Purva also means east. That means every Sanskrit word is both a space and also time. It's a spatio-temporal word. That is the richness of Sanskrit. That means each and every word in Sanskrit has a spatial, a temporal, a connotative, a etymological root, and also an extended syntax meaning. So that's the beauty of this language. So when we explored swastika, we could actually discover the Carnot cycle, the solar art cycle, and we had about 10 panels on this, and we found out works which were done in isolation by different scholars in different parts of the world. So what we had done is to combine them, and we could explain swastika as a representation of life cycle analysis, LCA, which is such an important concept today in environmental sciences and ecological sciences. And the word sasti or sastayan is the word which is the root of the word sustain, which is sustainability. So something which goes on and on, swasti, sastayan, is the principle of sustainability. So we published a book called The Image of Sustainability by using the swastika symbol, and we had a summer workshop where about 6 IITs and about 3 NITs collaborated. We had a 3-month workshop, and the outcome of that workshop was a book which was published with ISBN. It's, I think, one of the best edited books. We edited it about 6 times involving experts, and this book has a discovery of about 106 swastikas from about 23 different parts of the world. So Indian swastika went to different parts of the world in times of remote antiquity, which this book has proved to a certain extent only. There needs to be more and more research on this. But we are very excited when we made some of these subtle discoveries. So this is all about Nandan Tattya and Vastu Vidya, more to do with aesthetics and iconographic sciences, and almost coming to the end. So there you can see Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary. So we had some recognitions. I was very fortunate to meet the Honorable Prime Minister. Dr. Chaudhary, we heard he'll just come to us for about 1.5 minutes and then rush off to the Samavartan, which is the convocation of BHU and everything. But then fortunately, Narendra Modi ji was with us for about half an hour. He just stayed with us for about half an hour, for about half an hour, and he didn't want to leave. And then Smriti Irani ji was then the MHRD minister, and she wanted that Modi ji looks at all our panels. So I think Nishank ji got some news from Modi ji that some work is going on in IIT Kharagpur, and IIT Kharagpur has great teachers on Sanskrit right now. So I think with that background information, Nishank ji came a few years later, and we are very fortunate to have some time with him, and today in the morning he was referring to this moment. It's not a personal slide. What I've showed this slide, that there's a continuity from about 2016 to 2019 to 2020, November 6th. There is a continuity. Nothing dies, nothing goes away. Everything remains, provided you are sincere. Taina Mandolda, provided you are sincere, provided you are, Taina Dr. Panda, provided you are sincere. I'm not talking about my sincerity, I'm talking about the sincerity of my teammates. So the Sandhi team had been very sincere, very, very sincere, and a lot of sincere work was done. So there are a lot of best paper awards. You can see Dipanjan Shah, my student, he's about to submit his PhD. So he got a best paper award on creative economy in the Global Science Forum. And then we had art expositions with Seema, Anando, and others. So you can see the exhibition there. And then we had great gatherings. On the bottom left, you can see the gathering that we had MIT. You can see the daughter of Charles Correa, just sitting in the corner, and we had a fantastic discussion there. And the lowest picture in the bottom is a collaboration that we had with Columbia University, which is an Ivy League university. So these were some of the greatest achievements that we had, and you can see Madam Amita Sharma, for whom she's the daughter of late Dr. G.C. Pandey, Govinda Pandey, who is an authority of Sri Aurobindo's Dasam Mandala, the book. So Govinda Pandey's daughter is Miss Amita Sharma, and she actually found out Sandhi, and she coined the term Sandhi. So when you have the right people in the ministry, I mean, you get the right connection. So this was something which was very, very nice which happened, and we had a lot of publications on some of these areas. I mean, I think right now we have more than 25 publications in Sandhi itself. I mean, published books with ISBNs and 25 books, and more than 50 papers, I mean, under different genres. So I think this is almost towards the end of it, and this is what is going on route. And then after that, we got a one-time grant from ministry again, and so here you see some of the publications. And so here you see some of the publication. I don't know where this it works. So you can see the first one, Sandhi publication. We did a work on Shantiniketan, on the Baul Ashram, and then we got a project in Houston to design a Tagore Art Center, which is funded by alumnus Ruma Acharya and Ashok Desharkar. So we are designing a Tagore Center there, and that little book that you see third from right top row is a book which has been published with the University of London, which is a creative economy of Durga Puja. And very recently, this is a live project. We have got a project with Town Hall, Ministry of Culture, Government of West Bengal, where we have been assigned to do the entire museum of the entire gallery of Town Hall. So we are doing that at present, and on the left is a little book of mine which is called The Global History of Indian Architecture, which is now a textbook, which is a fallout. But these books are not mine. These are books all by different authors and different contributors. I'm just one of them, and there are hundreds of authors in this book within our institute and outside. So I think we could achieve something in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And very recently we have opened up a small lab, which is a digital iconographic and deep heritage exploration lab, where we are using Lumion, Adobe CS softwares and other softwares, along with parametric design. One of my students, she's a co-author with me in the first book, Akshata Mahanti. She's in NUS, National University of Singapore. She is doing work on parametric design, using software codes to decode a symbol bit by bit, by 01101101, like a QR code. So you break an iconographic image into a QR code, and from a QR code you break into a code image, and then you get an interpretation. Then you come back forth a couple of times, and then you come back to the original image. By virtue of that iteration, you get some interpretation. And these are the interpretation which could have been, might have been, in the minds of the people who have originally designed those symbols. So this is a first conjecture. This is a first conjecture. So these are new avenues of iconographic exploration. So untold stories, neglected stories, suppressed stories, deleted stories are again coming back, stories which are not told. So there is a fantastic saying by Alan Watts, one of the greatest philosophers of California, that the ancient wisdom cannot be suppressed by modern sciences. It will again come back. And it will become postmodern. It will become something which is post. And I think AI, computer science, computer language will play a very important role in that. Is already playing a very, like natural language processing, which is a combination of AI, human-machine interface, Sanskrit as a vehicle, and coding sequences. So 4 streams have come together to promote natural language processing. Am I right, Anuradha? They all come together as an NLP. She needs some water, I think. So, and we have a lot of collaborations. I'm not going to take up this. So here you see all the collaborations. Very recently, the bottom picture on the left, we have got a job of designing a tribal museum along with a garden, like the garden, Vrindavan Garden. So this is Hirakud Dam. So Dr. Chaudhary, we have got an assignment to design the tribals of Koromandalam, who are the original patrons of Jagannath temple. Much before it was a Shaiva or a Buddhist temples, Jagannath was a tribal god. So bring out those. So were they tribals, or are they Aryans, or are they something else? So we are trying to find out all those stories and put it in a museum. So this is going to come up in the place next to the Hirakud Dam. This is sponsored by the Corporate Social Responsibility Fund of Mahanadi Coal Limited's Coal India, Government of India. So this project is live. We are doing it right now. The the third picture is also live, which is the town hall project. And the fourth picture is with Gyana Pravaha, Harsh Niyotia Foundation. That is a project Varanasi. And Dr. Abhijit Mukherjee did a lot of good work there. And from there he branched to arsenic and he got his Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar. And he'll be speaking tomorrow morning in a very short way. So he is a very strong part of our Sandhi team. And very recently we are doing a project with Southern Universities at Kanchipuram, working on the Pallavis, the first ancient race of Dravidian India. This is the top middle picture. So we are working with Rajalakshmi institutions there. So it goes on, and we have a creative housing project with Netherlands, which is the first picture on the left. So I think we are very lucky, we are very blessed to have all these collaborations in the last 6-7 years. We just kept low, and it just goes on and on. So with this, I come to the end of the second presentation, after which Professor Chaudhary will give a good review of his style. So today we have lots of websites. So one website is the OCCR, which is based on my first book, The Concept of Complete Religion. So if somebody is interested, you can explore this website and know more about what we are doing. And so whatever we are doing, we are also going on web and keeping a portion of it, because a lot of people can access us through the web. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. So with this we go over to the third presentation, and I'll request Pal Babu to come and transfer the microphone to Dr. Chaudhary. And I think nobody needs to introduce Dr. Chaudhary, and I think I'll go there. So I met Dr. Chaudhary about 4 years back, or maybe 5 years back. Am I right? Yeah, in an exposition, and I thought she's really a fit into our IIT system, and with that, and then we got her as a faculty here, and this presentation that you're going to see is a accumulation of some of the great efforts that's happening, which is called the History of Indian Science and Technology, the history of Indian science and technology, under the ambit of today's Bharata-Tirtha. And you'll see how much of good work in terms of actually disseminating to our IIT students the various domains of Indian knowledge system is actually happening. That will be evident in Dr. Chaudhary's presentation. So with this, I have the honor and pleasure to give the microphone to Dr. Chaudhary. Thank you.
Next, huh? So, I'd like to just thank Professor Joycean for a very warm introduction, and also for the wonderful presentation that he made, a very, very elaborate presentation that he made, which has made my task extremely easy, because what we have done as a consequence of these efforts, these various multi-pronged efforts of the Sandhi project, is to try and condense them into a form of a course, and through that course try and reach out or disseminate this information in the youth of the country. Because one thing that I find, having done or with a background in Sanskrit studies, is that, and my interaction with a lot of students here, trying to teach them Sanskrit and heritage, is often the ignorance that is there about the huge contributions that the Indian tradition has made in the domains of science and technology. So while there is sometimes a hijacking of the actual content, the actual very, very significant content of the Indian scientists and technologists and humanitarian or humanists, there have been so many of very valid contributions that they have made, and somehow in various discourses that gets sidelined because of probably a controversial statement, etc. So one of the reasons that we decided to do or start a course on history of science and technology in ancient India was to take into cognizance these various contributions and then try and make them as scientifically established as possible. So the course that we started was History of Science and Technology in Ancient India, abbreviated into HISTI, which was started in 2018. But the genesis of that goes back a little further. So we had, there's this quotation from Manjul Bhargava, who is a Fields Medal awardee in mathematics. So he's in Princeton University. So he says that students in India should be taught about the great ancient Indian mathematicians like Panini, Pingala, Hemachandra, Aryabhatta and Bhaskara. Their stories and works inspired me, and I think they would inspire students across India. Many of these works were written in Indian languages, in beautiful poetry, and contain important breakthroughs in the history of mathematics. But I would like to take the story even further back to a personal beginning, where I grew up in the Sri Aurobindo Ashram School in Pondicherry, and having read the works of Sri Aurobindo and the mother, where they lay a lot of emphasis on Sanskrit and the fact that the entire Indic civilization rests on the foundations of Sanskritic knowledge. When I say that, it doesn't imply that one has to exclude the immense contributions made by thought or by thinkers in other linguistic groups. But what it implies is that the Sanskrit language itself, as Professor Joy Sen mentioned in the previous presentation, has certain features which allowed the emergence of some of the most phenomenal literature to emerge, and literature that included a combination of poetry, mathematics, all woven into one. So when I grew up listening to all of that, we were taught Sanskrit from a very young age, and also at a certain point there was a scientist who had come to give us a talk, and he was speaking about some of the remarkable contributions, I think, in chemistry. And at that point I was inspired. I said that it's worth taking up the studies of Sanskrit in order to try and unravel some of these discoveries that were made. And therefore, when I came in 2005, actually, I had the good fortune of being invited to Kharagpur to teach a 10-day camp on spoken Sanskrit. So that's where there was this spark of saying, you know, like they say that if you truly want something, the universe conspires for you to have it. So it was a little bit like that for me, because I was very intent on contributing in whichever significant or insignificant manner in the unraveling of this knowledge tradition, and also making it accessible to people, especially to our own youth, essentially. So that was it. And so when I came to Kharagpur in 2005, I was at that time trying to discuss and see what are the possibilities, and those possibilities emerged in about 10 years, 11 years time, when there was an opening and I came here and joined as a faculty, and also after meeting Professor Joy Sen, and we discussed about some of the areas that need exploration and exposure in a technical institute. And that's how a Sanskritist found herself in IIT Kharagpur, to do her own little bit to try and plant some seeds, because in the flow or in the rush of making a comfortable living, which is what is the programming of education as has been with the previous education policies, there is often a neglect of the need to grow deep roots in order to become a tall banyan tree, a sturdy banyan tree. So made my own efforts, or trying to make my own efforts with the help of a lot of people, to try and sow these small seeds which will help deepen the roots of youngsters growing up, the younger generation growing up with probably a little more awareness of the vast contributions of their own people, which will give them a sense of pride. So I joined in 2016, November. In 2017, I said it's the right moment. So very fortunate. One has to always also be very grateful for the opportunities that are provided that allow one to make the necessary connections that you know, facilitate the such events to happen. So in October 2017, we invited Professor Michel Danino from IIT Gandhinagar doing service to promote the contributions of Indian thought, Indian knowledge systems. He's got a brilliant series of lectures on that and also textbooks. They've come together as a team to say that we need to bring this knowledge to the forefront. And that knowledge has now been recognized by the National Education Policy, the latest one, and that's hopefully soon going to percolate into the grassroots level and allow people to know more about their own valuable contributions. We also have had Professor K. Ramasubramanian. He's another absolute stalwart and one of the few in the world, in fact, who has specialized in Indian mathematics. He, along with Professor Clemency Montel from the University of Canterbury, New Zealand, together they've done enormous work on trying to read these ancient texts, and because Sir Ramasubramanian also is a technical person, he is able to bridge that gap and make this knowledge readily available for anybody who has developed themselves to be able to appreciate that knowledge there. So with this fantastic team, we did a workshop called Introduction to the History of Science in Ancient India, and this was organized by the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences. So once this happened, we had almost a participation of 100 students, which was very encouraging for us. Students, faculty members, many people had joined along, and that was very encouraging for us. But then more importantly that led to a lot of brainstorming, and with our then director, Professor Parthapratim Chakraborty, a real visionary in this field, because he has also been instrumental in the promotion of the Sandhi project, and then when this workshop happened, he took personal interest in trying to see how we can weave this requirement into the curriculum of the institute itself. So together with him, with several other professors, we brainstormed and finally formulated a course called History of Science and Technology in Ancient India, which has been running, and I'm very happy to share that we've had more than about 600 students who have so far participated in this course. It gets offered every semester, and around 80 to 100 students take part in it. With a lot of selection also, we still manage to get good numbers, which is very encouraging because of the genuine interest that there is in this course. So the goals and agenda are that to first and foremost create an appreciation of Indian knowledge systems, to create a repository especially of lost archives for accurate characterizations, pursuing evidence-based research into the foundations of the knowledge systems, attempting the revival of lost science and technology that may be relevant today, developing a systematic scientific way to study history of science and technology in ancient India, and to see how we can bridge the gap between science and humanities, theoretical and action research. So in order to realize this, we had this roundtable meetings with professors across departments, because one thing as a Sanskritist I always admit is my handicap in not being technologically sound. Many of these topics are very technical, so just knowing the language is insufficient, and most often what happens, those who are technology sound are ignorant about Sanskrit. So one of the things, the requirements that emerged was to see how we can make this or bridge this gap. How can we make technology savvy people familiar with Sanskrit, and hopefully down the line have more and more Sanskrit knowledgeable people interested in technology. So that's where we are also trying to make a bridge. So several professors across departments were very kind enough to lend their expertise, and they come and teach on this course. So it has these three components: theoretical, empirical, and an outreach aspect to it. And as you can see, there are various thrust areas. I'll elaborate on that as we move on. So here are some of the themes and modules. So there is the theoretical relevance. So we try and expose the students to the context, the concepts, and the correlations. So there is an important need to look back to see what was there before in the domains of science and technologies, but it's not enough to always have this backward gaze. One needs to be able to look back in order to leap forward with greater confidence and with greater grounding, and so to see what were those approaches in the Indic tradition that allowed a more sustainable type of coexistent development to flourish. So hoping to gain insights from the past in order to build a better collective future for humanity, in fact. So to see how we can therefore build epistemological and sustained axiological departures, idea. So here are some of the empirical, the hard inventions. We have civil engineering, so buildings, which is taught by Professor S.K. Bhattacharyya from the civil engineering department. He's also our deputy director. So what is always very heartening about this course is that all those who are teaching on it genuinely believe in the need to communicate this important wisdom to the students that are here, who are here. So there is an element of heart which gives this course a very special flavor. It's not just another course for scoring marks and getting a degree out of having done his study. We try very hard to make them feel the importance of the subject. And so the second one is taught by is architecture by our own Professor Joyce, where he enthuses them to understand the connectivity between the physical world and the other world that we are not always so conscious about. We have water technologies taught by Professor Jinya Mukherjee from the humanities department, and another young scholar who's done an enormous amount of work in environmental humanities, urban humanities, environment in the area settings, etc. So she does it also with a lot of passion. We have metallurgy. We have for metallurgy we have an external expert, Professor Omkar Mohanty from IIT Bhubaneswar, a former professor from here, who makes them understand about the different properties. So one thing I'd also like to mention here is that the typical format of this course is looking back at what was there, looking at the present scientific developments, and seeing how we can combine these two to go forward. So material sciences by Professor Shantanu Dhara from the School of Medical Sciences and Technologies. He is a material scientist and shows how the surgical instruments, the technology involved in the creation of instruments, the materials that were involved played an important role in ensuring that they are effective. In more of the soft innovation, so there is Sanskrit, Yoga Psychology and Aesthetics. So I do the Sanskrit and Yoga Psychology, but Sanskrit really presented as the psycholinguistic dimension and the very, very scientific dimension of Sanskrit as a language science here. Yoga Psychology as a mind sciences. So I always start the class with this idea that all of these, everything that we have created around us or that we will be creating or have created could only happen because of a certain quality of the mind. If the mind is cluttered, it cannot come up with something innovative. It needs space to allow it to soar and find connections and make meaningful things. Therefore, in India, there was a huge emphasis on the understanding of the mind sciences, which I try and capture in brief through this course on Yoga Psychology. Then we have Professor Priyadarshi Patnaik, who talks on Indian aesthetics, because there is again a very, very elaborate science of aesthetics that has been discussed in the Natya Shastra and other texts to show the depth with which they have even explored the human dimension of life. Another focus on is health and economy. So we have an external expert, Dr. Shruti Sharma, whom you will meet in the next few days also. So she does a lovely presentation on Ayurveda, and basically also the reason for talking about Ayurveda is to help the students become aware of the importance of food, of the diet, of the different times of the day, the dinacharya, how to follow it in a way so that they can look after themselves. What is their own prakriti, their own swabhava, so that they can make the most of their life. Then we have yoga physiology by Professor Jyotirmoy Chatterjee, who is the head of the School of Medical Science and Technology. Sir talks about Ayurgenomics, again showing the fact that Ayurgenomics is a very contemporary subject, but as you can see the combination of Ayur, so there is a Ayurvedic component and Ayurvedic understanding and genetics which has been combined. Another area very interesting is cuisine, but basically not so much as the exploration of recipes, but to understand that cooking itself involves a lot of technology. And this was highlighted by a chef, one of the renowned international chefs, Chef Manjeet Singh Gill, who had mentioned that there is so much of science involved in cooking. The kind of material you use, the kind of vessels you use, the heat that you need to generate, there's just so much of technology involved. But unfortunately, there's not much research that has been done to understand the subtleties of this interrelationship. Mathematics, so no science would be possible without the mother of a lot of sciences, which is mathematics. Mathematics is taught by Professor Somesh Kumar, who is the chairperson of this session and a professor of mathematics. And we have measurements, which is taught by Professor Parthipratim Chakraborty, our former director and one of the most eminent computer scientists of the country. So, PPC sir, as we fondly call him, sir does also the overview of the course, because when this course was formulated, he was the brain behind it, and so he was in a very good position to help the students or to enthuse the students to gather, to make the most of this course. So, the last part of it, which is the outreach. So, we try and do this institutional cross-learning and exchanges. The courses is picking up. So, right in the beginning, we had to just find out what is the right balance of all the different courses, the teachers, the students, etc. But within that, we've already tried to reach out. So, that was going to the Indian National Museum in Kolkata, and we were trying to explore possibilities of having closer collaborations, and hopefully that will materialize in the future, the years to come. And of course, with the announcement today of setting up a center of excellence for promoting Indian knowledge systems, so hopefully that will get a boost and we'll be able to do more meaningful linkages between culture and technology. We have interactive workshops that have taken place, exposure visits to archaeological sites, as well as some media coverage. So, institutional cross-learning exchanges, as I already mentioned, with the Indian National Museum, and also some others who have come here and learnt about what we are doing. Then there is some interactive workshops which I talked about, Professor Ramasubramanian, Michelle Danino, and Professor Clemency. Exposure. So, we try and take our students to some archaeological sites. There is one in Bengal, it's a Midnapur, which is quite close by, called Patra, and that's, so they get a first-hand exposure to trying to understand the different arches, what did it involve, etc. You know, from what they learn in the course, then they try to go on site and try to apply some of that in making sense of it. And then, like in Patra, for example, there were many murals where the design had worn off. So, possibilities of maybe reconstructing it using technology in order to enhance archaeological work as well. We got some media coverage because we were one of the first to have rolled out a whole course on this. But there are several efforts in various institutions also. So, IIT Bombay has been doing it for a long time, IIT Gandhinagar has also been doing it. So, I think there is a need for collectively promoting this study. I mean, all of this needs to be enhanced so that we have access to our own treasures rather than it being fed to us from outside. So, we had Shri Sanjeev Sanyalji had come, and we were having a discussion and sharing with him. So got some inputs. So we are constantly trying to have these interactions and inputs from more experienced sources who have been delving in these fields for a long time. And we have an innovative assessment framework a little bit. So especially this year with the onslaught of Corona, the pandemic, we are trying to encourage students to create maybe more of blogs that can be their experience shared with others, other students of their peers. We also have video making. The children will be making their own videos on certain topics so that we can generate content through this class that will be valuable for anybody interested to know more about it. So we are trying to see how, and then we have the syllabus also to try and design a syllabus, and then that's the way ahead and that's the final. So NEP 2020, as we've seen since morning, talks a lot about education, new education. Then we have history of science and technology, that's ancient India, the course, and therefore way ahead one has to just see how to bring more and more synergies between science, technology, culture, innovation, future prospects, etc. So I think with these words I'll close here. So thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.
So this was really amazing. That shows not only life goes on, but life goes on with a lot of tempo, pride, and promises. So the course on the history of ancient Indian science and technology has been one such. Yes. So with this, we come to the fourth and the last presentation. It's almost like a full circle with Dr. Arnob Hajra, who has been like the life bearer of Nehru Museum of Science and Technology. Yeah. And I like the camera to focus a little bit on Dr. Hajra. Amit. Yeah. So Dr. Hajra has been there with Nehru Museum of Science and Technology for about almost going to be 2 decades, and he did his PhD with the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, and I was very fortunate. I was very fortunate to be a part of his DSC committee. So we know each other very well. We have worked out things together, including a movie, which is a part where Arnob actually almost formulated the script and everything. And now today there are almost hundreds of footfall in the Nehru Museum of Science and Technology in different seasons and across the year. And a lot of people actually come to IIT Kharagpur just to see that building, a building which stands famous, which otherwise was going to be a part of the infamy, a part of the darker shades of the Second World War, a part of the darker shades of the tortures and the atrocities that the British government had done in this part of India, and also a part of the backwardness that was kept in this district of Midnapur. So with this, we'll go on to the other side, and I'll share a few moments with Dr. Hajra to take you through this fourth and final presentation. It will be a small one. So it's really a pleasure. To be a part of a building which stands with a lot of history, with a lot of past, with a lot of present, and of course a lot of future. So let's see what the Museum of Science and Technology stores for. So Nehru Museum of Science and Technology, as you see, is located at a historic Hijli detention camp building, presently named as the Hijli Shaheed Bhavan. And according to history, this building was constructed almost a century ago to house the district headquarters. But at that point of time,
nobody really knew what's going to be the final purpose of this particular building or the premises or the area. But in the late, from the late 1920s to the early 1930s, this building was converted to a detention camp because the growing presence of what you call the freedom struggle in and around Bengal, particularly in eastern India, was very much becoming a prominent expression of the Indian youth. And especially the youth of Midnapur was very strong, was a principal component in the India's freedom struggle movement. So in this soil, there are hundreds and hundreds of people who were detained. There are more than tens who were killed and murdered. And as a result, this very ground on which the premises of IIT Kharagpur will grow in the days to come is actually a portal on the sacrifice, on the bedrock of martyrdom. So this is just not another institute. This is just not another concrete glass and steel. This is a building which has been built on the bedrock of sacrifice. World War II, and the whole world is shaking, and about 70 millions of people will be killed because of the atrocities between the Allied force and the Axis force. The Axis force is Germany and Japan, and the Allied force is the United Kingdom, France, portions of Europe, and finally with Russia, USSR, and the United States of America, because America joins a little late. So at a certain point of time, almost towards the end of the World War, and in fact this incident is linked with the end of the World War, Japan commits a mistake. That's attacking Pearl Harbor. And President Franklin D. Roosevelt was forced to actively join World War II. So he promised British Prime Minister Winston Churchill that he is going to send the American Air Force strongly and be an active part of the World War II. But much before that, there is an unknown history. The government of United Kingdom, Dr. Hajra, as we know, the government of United Kingdom had a strong partnership with the American Air Force. And this premise at that point of time was actually, it was handed over to the Americans. Hon'ble knows the whole history, Dr. Hajra. And there's a long story. I mean, we can just stick to this slide for about half an hour and say a very long story. And this was a place which would finally become the Kolaikonde Air Base as an extended part of the Indian Air Force. That is a much later story. But it was here some of the American officers were coming to train the British officers and keep a line of American Air Force here. So somewhere towards the early 1940s, after Japan was involved very much in the Pacific, America became pertinent to maintain an air force, and especially in the Pacific. And particularly when the Pearl Harbor was attacked, within a few weeks and months, United States of America took a decision to actually bomb Japan by sending 2 different weather planes to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. One was Enola Gay, the picture that you see below, and there was another plane which was supposed to take off after a few days. Now the first plan was actually to come at Kharagpur and refuel and either go to Rangoon and then take a detour to Tokyo, or it would have gone to Singapore and taken the other path through the Asia Pacific. But as a part of the last movement, it was negated, and the plane actually flew more towards the east and took a Asia Pacific route. So somehow we got linked with the Second World War, but we did not become a part of the infamy of a plane, Enola Gay, which will take the nuclear bomb and drop it on Japan and kill about a few thousand people within a few flashes of a second. So this is a place where there's a lot of history, and this place has a war site. This is a war at the global level. This also has a war at the Indian level, which is the Indian War of Independence. And finally, after India's independence in 1947, this particular premises was converted into a different dream, as it's evident in the slide, that it got mixed up with the idea for the establishment of a higher technical institute, which will eventually germinate in the institutes of technology, or the Indian Institutes of Technology, from 1951 onward. So this is exactly something which Dr. Hajra has portrayed so well. So these are some of the pictures of the 1930s, the gap between the First World War and the Second World War. And then you come to the late 1930s and the 40s, which is almost the Second World War. And then in 1950s, this building is converted to be the first building where scientists are coming from the University of Urbana-Champaign, from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and some other institutes to train the first professors of IIT Kharagpur. Now, that's why in the main institute building we have an MIT corridor, because the MIT architects were involved with Baladi, Thompson and Matthews, BTM, to design a main institute building almost in the replica of the main building that we have in Massachusetts Institute of Technology in New Cambridge, on the northeastern seaboard of the United States. So this is a fantastic history. And by the late 60s, IIT Kharagpur had tremendous collaboration with other countries like Germany and also to an extent France. Of course, other IITs also had huge collaboration. IIT Kanpur came up much later, and it had fantastic collaboration with the United States of America. But in the late 1970s, the buildings slowly change, but the actual thing does not change. And the famous institution, which Pandit Nehru said was very infamous for the sacrifices and the tortures and the atrocities, was finally converted into a systems of knowledge inquiry, which is the IIT Kharagpur. And I belong to that time, which is 1980s, because I was a student at Radhakrishnan Hall of Residence from 1979 to 1984. So I have seen the building in that form. And then in the 1990s, some of my juniors were witnesses to this picture. And this is the final view where the forefront of the building has been converted to a beautiful garden. And especially if you go right now, against a wonderful sunshine, you'll see a beautiful building. I'll just request Dr. Hajra to come and stand very close to me so that sometimes we can come in the same frame. Because he is actually an MST IIT Kharagpur. I have just come in for a few years, and but I have been involved with museums lifelong. So somehow, by God's blessing, I've been again involved with the museum. So what has it set up? So IIT Kharagpur has set up the Nehru Museum of Science and Technology, and it became a part of a very large mission to acknowledge the contributions of India's freedom struggle, because a lot of people are not aware of that story. So it was opened on August 3rd, and to preserve the artifacts and memorabilia pertaining to the origin of the first IIT, the mother of IIT system, and to provide the young minds at the school and college level, which is very, very important, because even till date, tens and hundreds of students come almost every month to have a glimpse of this. Even when there is an alumni meet, the alumni always come with their spouses. The husbands get their wives, the wives get their husbands. If they're external professors coming for any international workshop, there is always a small time to go to NMST and have a glimpse, and Hon'ble is always there. Dr. Hajra is always there to show, and we'll come to the later slides where we'll see what has happened out of now. So outreach and dissemination has been a very important part and portion of this Nehru Museum of Science and Technology. So one of the most important backdrop, one of the most important, what you can say, the shade, the background of this premises is the historic prison cell. A lot of personalities has come. This is the district of Midnapur where Gurudev Rabindranath Thakur had come and protested. This is a place where Gandhiji had come later to be a witness to some of the atrocities, and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose had come on a certain day to pay homage to the people who were tortured and killed, and there were others. So this is a building which has great remembrance, it has a rich past, and there can be hundreds of names which Dr. Hajra, you and I mean, probably can recount. So you are always, whenever you come to IIT Kharagpur, it's a request you visit this place, have a glimpse of the collection, the publication, the Hijli detention camp, where there was a male portion and a female portion, and it's a part of a wonderful movie which has been created by Dr. Hajra and Pinaki Sarkar and the team, and Professor Priyodashi Patnaik, and especially Professor Dhrubajyoti Sen has been a part of that movement, and I was a back-end person in that whole process of making that movie. But I always enjoy making movies, which Arnob knows. And we have great plans to make future movies, because movies are very, very important. And ছবির মধ্যে দিয়ে তসবির কা through tasbihs and tatthachitra and chalachitra, we can enter the heart, psyche and mind of the young minds. You know, it's a very important way of documenting things. So there are fantastic galleries on history. Most of them has been organized and steered, and they have been curated and archived by the team, which has been monitored by Dr. Hajra. And it has a combination of mounted fiberglass panels, along with photo panels, models of different kinds. There's a diorama with appropriate write-ups. And in the future, we have many more plans, because there's an expansion of a very specific museum on the history of IIT Kharagpur and the history of Nehru Museum of Science and Technology. What was the immediate past and the remote past, and what is the present? So that plan is probably on, and we are planning to have that in the next 1 year. And in addition to that, we have another plan which will be the showcasing of the last 3 or 4 slides. So the newly renovated science and technology galleries were done very recently, and you can see our very esteemed Honorable Secretary, Mr. Amit Khare coming and inaugurating a portion of this, and he's touring with our director, Professor Virendra Tewari, and students are accompanying. The students will be hopefully again back in the campus in a few months, and they'll be coming in batches. So this is a place which represents the surges, the aspirations, the great hopes in the making. And this is also the place where we have to remember that great achievements are just not like that. They come through sacrifice. Because whenever we do anything in IIT Kharagpur, we are doing it by virtue of the sacrifice made by our martyrs. So everything in IIT Kharagpur is not related to patents and business. It's actually connected with sacrifice. The Nehru Museum of Science and Technology reminds us again and again and again of this note of sacrifice. So the Ministry of Culture has really helped us in the last 12 years or so to upgrade the technical aspects of the museum, and the National Council of Science Museum, Kolkata, and other organizations has also provided different kinds of assistances. So a wonderful gallery that you see bottom left, and there is a next slide on that, where beautiful displays are there. I mean, there is a whole range of things from numerical sciences, mathematics, to machine, to mechanical sciences, light and sound, physics on the principle of mechanics, and then to electricity and magnetism, to more applied projects on rails and transportation, water transportation, aviations in water, aviations in the air, and then there's a history of computing machines, you know, from the ENIAC IBM days to the 486, 586, and then the Pentium machines of computer science, and finally the inflatable planetarium, which is a part of the exhibition, and of course the movie, which is a big attraction. You know, there's about 25 minutes movie, which is beautifully made with the history. Mr. Pinaki Sarkar is the bearer of that, and we are just a part of the team. And Professor Dhrubajyoti Sen along with Dr. Hazra, Professor Patnaik, played a great role in making that movie, and I was a part of the process in a very small way. And there are other activities which happened, like organizing workshops, seminars, model making, various scientific things, and then NMST also celebrates round the year. There are different times which is maintained, and one of the most important thing which comes out of the NMST is a calendar at the end of the year, for which the entire campus fraternity waits. They wait for that calendar, because you get calendars from anywhere and everywhere, but the calendar which comes from NMST is on a theme, and the theme is the heart and soul of IIT Kharagpur. So every year we have a theme. Like last year we had on sports, and it was intimately connected with the technology students' Gymkhana. So this year we are planning a theme. It's a surprise. It's a surprise. So the development of galleries are great. This is a place where Dr. Radhakrishnan had come in the second convocation. This is a place where Dr. Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad had come in the initial days. This is a place where Pandit Nehru and even Mrs. Indira Gandhi had come on various occasions. This is a place where all our great presidents, a lot of presidents had come in different times, up to the times of Pranab Mukherjee, times of Zakir Hussain and others. So this is a place where the footsteps and the footprints of great souls has anchored. And this is a great place that we need to remember, cherish, sustain, operate, and maintain. So that's the promise, and that's the responsibility of this Museum of Science and Technology. So with this, we have a little bit of a hope. This is the future. And as you all know, that IIT Kharagpur is going to celebrate for the next 4 to 5 years the Platinum Jubilee celebration. And there will be a historical revival on the contemporary relevance of Indian science and technology. And today in the morning, we are very blessed that the Hon'ble Minister, Dr. Ramesh, Pokhriyal, Nishank, declared the immense possibility of a center of excellence on Indian knowledge systems at IIT Kharagpur. So NMST will be working closely and hopefully with that center. And at NMST, to begin with, we'll probably have a small gallery on the history of Indian science and technology, just a glimpse, so that when students come, they also know that the history of world science and technology with that of India, like mathematics, its beginning in India and even its continuity in the modern times. Like Ramanuj, the Fields Award winner, which Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary was showing in the preceding presentation. So this is something, and we have 3 goals. One goal is to have a logical extraction of the past. Then we should structure the contemporary relevance, as of now, and then outlining a path of future scientific resurgence in terms of documentation, or outreach, and publications. Because publications at the end of the day remains very important. The Rig Veda remains even today. Maybe it was composed 7,000 years back. The first book on written book on spirituality and cosmology. So books and publication are ultimately, at the end of the day, a hard copy book is a hard copy book, no matter how many webs and blogs and websites you have. So NMST already has more than 50 publications, and Dr. Hajra has been a bearer of many of that. He is a very silent and very dedicated worker, and I am very happy that I have him with me, or he has me with him, either way. So this is what we did with Sandhya and others. We're going to club up this. So we had different exhibitions and stalls and outreach at the India International Center in Delhi. At the book fair, you can see Pandit Ajay Chakraborty, Dr. Gautam De, and experts from Shantiniketan, Professor Arunandu Banerjee, Swami Ramananda, and Dr. And then you see the exhibition being inaugurated by Shri Sanjeev Sanyal, Principal Economic Advisor. He has his talk tomorrow in the first session, the first talk, and you can see alumnus Arjun Malhotra, along with our Deputy Director, Sriman Bhattacharyya, accompanying Sri Sanjeev Sanyal to inaugurate the exhibitions. So IIT Kharagpur is already into the practice and the habit of doing fairly good exhibitions. And this is where our Director, Professor Virendra had come to the book fair stall to inaugurate our stall. and he almost was with us for an hour, spending and reading books in the stall for about an hour. So he knows each and everything of what we are doing. So we had Sandhi, we had outreach, we had dissemination in Delhi and other cities. So we are going to bring all that together in a very small epitome at NMST, in the Museum of Science and Technology. And we also have, so Sanjay ji came to NMST. This is a picture from a few years back. So we had exhibitions at ICCR. We had exhibitions and collaborations with the topmost publisher of Bengal, which is Anando Publishers. So they are all willing to help us and take us forward. So with this promises, we are looking for a making of galleries on the history and contemporary of relevance of Indian science and technology. A making of galleries on history and contemporary relevance of Indian science and technology. And this is what we did at ICCR, and our plans is to do a similar thing at Nehru Museum of Science and Technology. So with this, we come to the close of this fourth and last presentation. I really thank Dr. Hazra to be with me. He is actually the maker of this slide. So with this, we come to the end of today's session, and I really thank Shri Shiv Shankar Das and his CET team and the audiovisual team, Palda and others, to really help us. So we'll again convene in the auditorium tomorrow in the morning. It's, I think, at 10 o'clock, which is the plenary session, which will have one key talk by Dr. Srinivasan, followed by a small talk by Shanti Sharu Bhatnagar awardee, our professor, Dr. Abhijit Mukherjee, with a little bit of a closing remark by me in that same session. And the whole session will be chaired by Dr. Anuradha Chaudhary. So kindly join us for this scintillating session, a keynote address by Professor M.D. Srinivas, after which we'll have the technical session 1, where Sri Sanjeev Sanyal and others will be speaking from session to session. So please join us tomorrow. This is day 2 tomorrow, November 7th at 10 o'clock, and either on the web link or through the YouTube channel, whichever you have an access to. Thank you so much. Have a good day, and have a good rumination and pondering of what you heard on the Indian knowledge systems, on the 4 domains, the 4 presentation, which began with a wonderful presentation by Professor Singh, then followed by others, on the kind of activities which already we have been doing at IIT Kharagpur. Namaskar. Thank you.